Welcome to Beyond the Firewall, the business bytecast, where tech and business collide. Get expert insights, real-world strategies, and the latest trends in bite-sized episodes. Stay ahead, stay secure, and explore what's beyond the firewall. Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for listening into the Beyond the Firewall, where we talk about more than just technology, but business and everything else included. So, got my best friend here, Ryan Morris, back again. And, been a crazy week for me. I just traveled across the U.S., did my big conference this week, and at the Channel Futures MSP 500. If you haven't seen us on all of the social media, we're very gracious enough to have won the MSP 500 now for 3 years in a row, top leading MSP in the globe. So that was a lot of fun and exciting. How are things for you this week?
They are great. I am telling you, I'm being productive. This is the thing that I think is good. Weeks when you have many airplane rides, I love going places. I love to go out there and be at the conferences, see the people, actually feel the energy of the industry. Yeah. It's kind of tough to get some stuff done. So kudos to you for doing the big conference, and you're back in the office, right in the saddle. You're going.
Yeah, you know what? I was cranking out emails, and technology is great that way, where you can be virtually anywhere in the world and still people don't even know that. I had phone calls. People are like, oh, okay, are we still meeting next week? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, but I'm in Florida right now. So it's a beautiful thing.
Stuff. And as we were saying, right, as we were launching into this thing, anything, anywhere, anytime, as long as there's a virtual background, nobody knows where you are or are not. It's just, hey, life is, we are where we need to be and when we need to be for the client. We're not stuck in one location anymore. Now, that said, maybe public infrastructure on Wi-Fi and cell phone coverage could get a little bit better out there in the world. Yes. But we're all working towards a better future.
Definitely. Yeah. We're pushing services. We're not pushing products, or the products that we are is, virtual. I'm not making bolts. So, it's pretty awesome. And, the conference was really interesting. I got to tell you, between Microsoft and, all the other vendors that were there, Dell was there talking about the next gen technologies. We had the flavors on, AI and the next evolution on how that's going to impact computers. And then there was the whole thing on AI in the sense of software and in innovation on that. That was pretty awesome. And then day two is primarily around cybersecurity. And it was really cool because obviously it's AI cybersecurity versus AI cyber defense, or should I say cyber attack. And so they're trying to figure out that next play. And it's an evolution. But one of the last things that was part of the conference was about economy between mergers and acquisitions, about customer spending, both in Canada, in the US, where tariffs have been taken into effect. Consumer spending now is being shifted, and technology is sort of the forefront on helping companies and individuals make those decisions on how they're going to be doing their next. So it was really intriguing. And I think that to me was the most thought provoking, because, every time that you're in a bit of a uncertainty, it becomes sort of a conversation of, okay, how am I going to get through that?
Yep. See, I think that's a really healthy innovation or an approach for the vendors and for the media and for all the players in the technology industry. Let's say it this way. You and I, we work in technology because we think technology is cool. We choose to do this because we're nerds and we enjoy this stuff, and that's fascinating. But what that means at an industry-wide level, we invent stuff. And man, we cannot stop talking about the new things that we've invented. We're on the bleeding edge. Here's the next new hardware, software, services, virtualization, artificial this or that. For that group of people to get together and go, okay, hold on a minute. Let's look around, see what's happening in the real world around us. How does that affect our business? And what can we do? I mean, this is huge kudos to you, because to be on that list obviously is an accomplishment, but to go there and like do the brain connection with all of these other people that are leading large global firms and delivering these kinds of technology services, it's impossible to live in a bubble, right?
Yeah,
Like it,
exactly.
most businesses, especially small businesses, I think
Yeah,
that the single biggest challenge facing companies as they try to either drive growth or, like you said, manage through uncertainty or reinvent a business, make it more financially sound and healthy. I swear, I think the biggest single challenge is not skill, it's not know how, it's not your past experiences and your education level, it's perspective. It's the fact that most of us know every last thing about our business right up to the four walls, and then the connections we have with the customers who pay us. But we often just miss the idea of just pause for a second, look around. There are other people out there who do what you do. You know, it's easy, especially in the technology industry. Lots of us get that feeling all the time of, man, I'm the only one and I have problems no one else has ever had. You wouldn't even begin to understand. And then you look around and go, there might be about 50,000 companies that do that just in North America. Okay, what are they doing? What can I learn from them? What new ideas and blind spots can I overcome? Like for the tech industry to take a breath and not be like, woohoo, we've got all the fanciest stuff in the world, and
right.
actually go back and go, okay, guys, for a minute, let's talk about the real world and the economy and our businesses in that economy. That's a positive step forward. So I'm hoping we can come up with answers, but at least just having the conversation, that's the good start.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the blinders are always on when we're looking at, shiny new things, and we kind of just want to, chug forward in our journey. But there are so many other variables out there that kind of bombard us all the time with unknown variables between that. Tariffs, we had that earlier in the year, other global elements that took into effect, wars across the planet. And at the same time, we still have our own domestic issues that we're still dealing with, that just people can and cannot afford things, and businesses are also making significant changes out there. So, when you don't realize what's changing around you, it can blindside you when you're not opening your eyes and pausing for a minute and taking a look at what's around you. So, I
Yeah.
agree with you on that. It's a common issue for a lot of businesses out there.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is if you look at the data, you start with just kind of raw economic trends and what the macro picture looks like across the global economy, separate it by region down into like your neighborhood in your city. There are radically different experiences that happen at exactly the same time. One of the things that I think is fascinating on the data level is that if you look across the last 60 years, right, we've recognized that periods of growth and periods of recession are reasonably cyclical, fairly predictable, right?
Right.
Once ish a decade, there's a thing that comes up and everybody goes, "Oh no, it's the worst ever. It's terrible." But then it gets better and we all look around and go, okay, grow up. Maybe we've all been through one or two of these things before and it is possible to survive again, right? But that's on a macro level that we go through it at that kind of large cyclical level. When you
Yes.
look at it, if you break it down by geographic region and by vertical industry, right? Like if you said manufacturing versus consumer electronics versus financial services, and you said North America versus Europe, or North America urban versus North America small market, roughly 30% of all of those little subcategories. If you come in and you say, where are you in the marketplace and what is the vertical you're targeting? Roughly one third of the markets that are out there are in recession at some point at any given point in time, right? So even when the market is growing, house building in Western Canada or in the Southern US might be sucking wind, right? Or you look at it and go, man, the electronics and technology industry is booming. but logistics and distribution and the supply chain industry is really struggling. Okay. There is no such thing that says markets will always expand. Growth, perpetual growth, uninterrupted into the future is the most naive thing that we can possibly do. What matters for us is we need to have the perspective, the context awareness of what's going on, not just with our individual business. And then you look at your peers and people who do things similarly, but also into your customers as well as into your suppliers. Because if my business is doing fine, but the vertical markets that I'm selling to are starting to struggle and cut back on budgets and whatever, hey, that stuff all rolls right downhill into your accounting. Because if their industry struggles but your industry is booming, reality will check somebody, right? So
Right.
I think that very first thing of you got to stop a minute and look around and be a student of your own industry and the context of customers and suppliers that surround you in that environment. If you don't know what's going on, A, you're going to get a bad surprise. And B, you're not going to sound like a really savvy, trustworthy business professional when you're talking to leaders at your client organizations, right? Like you should never learn about difficult times in a vertical segment, like the economy is sucking in this one part of the economy. If your customer is the first one who tells you that, that radically reduces your trust level with them. They look at you and go, "What do you mean you didn't know that I was struggling? What do you mean you're not paying attention to my business and my industry and the things that I'm dealing with?" It is you can't, go down the rabbit hole and spend 99% of your time just like reading up on the headlines and figuring out everything that's out there. You still got to run your business, but you
Right.
must set aside time to be a professional student of your industry context. And just way too many of us out here, we live in a bubble, we work in our four walls, we just don't pay attention to what's going on around us. And that's why everybody's like, oh no, how did this happen? How did we get here? Well, if you'd been watching, you would have seen it coming all along. And the adjustments you need to make wouldn't be nearly so abrupt or painful because you would have been preparing as you went.
Right. It's a very good point. And it's interesting you say that. I find that one of the nice things about what I do in our industry is we service so many different sectors. We're not in a particular vertical or niche like some of other organizations out there. And it's always interesting because I get a lot of pushback going, well, why would you do that? And I go, listen, if I was in real estate right now and only in real estate, Toronto market is getting hammered. And anybody who's in that space right now is seeing a correction that they haven't seen since like 1991 kind of thing. Maybe not as bad as 91, but definitely this is the first major correction in over 20 years. And you're right. There are organizations and industries right now that still have not felt a bump in the road, and they're still soaring, and people are still spending, and people are still doing in other various industries because they're not as impacted. So it's interesting to see the differentiators because there's always a different segment within even the Toronto market or even like within our customer base for that matter, that some of them are growing and some of them are holding on and some of them are cutting back. So being receptive to it and being on top of it, I fully agree with you. It's been something that has saved us, and we've actually done something very interesting is we've been trying to be more proactive on that. So one of the things that we've been doing lately has been reaching out to some of these organizations and saying we have new offerings. We have offerings that are, call it, I wouldn't say cheap, but I would say more of a value to them and maybe a better package or a better bundle to save them a few bucks.
Mm-hmm.
And the appreciation of that, it's kind of like, they're in a luxury vehicle and they're driving every day in a luxury vehicle and they're barely making their payments. And instead of me waiting for them to kind of say they can't afford the payments anymore, I'm coming in and saying, I can get you into a new car, and I want to shave off 10, 20, 30% off your monthly bill, and be that proactive. And I'm going to let you off free and clear from the existing contract. Let's talk about it. Most of them have been so grateful that I was able to do that pivot on product and deliverables. The service is still there. It's just a different series of products.
Mhm.
And I'm just building that trust, building that credibility. And it's not for everybody. Not everybody wants to offer that, but at the same time, we were able to do that and actually build trust and bring more value to our organization.
See, I think that's a terrific example of there are ways to survive in uncertain times, right? As businesses look around, when the market is good, we're all making money. When the market is bad, we're all losing money. Yeah, but that's just not true, right?
Yep.
They're some of the largest businesses, the global brands that you and I do business with and recognize every day in the technology industry and beyond the technology industry. Some of the very biggest names you see out there were founded in a recession
Yes.
because they were not a big established legacy company that was struggling to manage through all of the things that they were dealing with, all the customer cutbacks, all the things that are going on. They were young, they were small, they could be nimble, and they could go out and say, you get 99 things from the marketplace, but there's one thing that is just killing you right now. And none of these guys can solve that problem. We're just going to, boom, we're going to solve that problem. Do it well. And it's amazing how, again, very well recognized brand names in technology. That's how they got started, was the world was struggling, the market was down, the industry was sheltering and protecting itself, and they were like, how about we actually solve the thing that's causing pain for our customers? And exactly as you described, if you can have the business savvy to find a way to manage your own supply chain, identify alternative solutions that bring a different economic cost. If you can figure out a value story to your customers, I mean, you do that once with a customer and they go, wow, this guy wasn't just trying to upsell, upsell, upsell. He was here looking to be a partner and actually help me out. Do that once, they'll remember it. Do it twice, and they will never talk to one of your competitors because they get way too many sales calls every single day from smart guys who are here to do something new, shiny, flashy. And
Yeah.
when you're in there going, let's manage through this together, I think that is absolutely vital. That's why I say, when step one is context. You got to know what's going on out there. Step number two is you absolutely have to reassess your platform and your offer alignment, right? Just because it was the perfect stack of technology or services or whatever it is that you sell, you spent a lot of time, you did a lot of R&D, you found the right things, you built your stack. Well, the world outside of us didn't stay still. They actually grew or they shrunk, and things get better or they get worse. And what was the ideal set of technology and tools for one market context might be radically inappropriate 6 months later. You have to be able to take that step back and go, okay, what do we offer? What is the clear value that it delivers to people? And does that value actually align to the problem my customer is willing to pay to solve right now? Yesterday, maybe it was bullseye, directly on target, but now they're focused on a different problem, right? Now they have new pain, new challenges that they need to solve. And if you can't adapt to stay relevant to the marketplace, that's just, I engineered the best solution and market just doesn't understand me. So I'll just, talk bad about those customers until they come back and give me all their money. Good luck with that strategy. Good luck with
Yeah,
that
good
strategy.
luck. Yeah, if you can survive that, I know. And it's great because when you talk about people in our industry that were leaders in that, in my generation, I would say Michael Dell was one of them, in the sense that, in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, when I started my company in 2001, big recession, market crashed. It was an uncertain time. We had 9/11 happen. It was just an unprecedented kind of, doom and gloom era. And Michael was already somewhat off the ground, but he was still young and nimble. And I remember he was like, that product was flying off the shelf because it was cost effective. It was undercutting most of the two other main brands on the market. And actually, I think there was Compaq was still around and Toshiba was still around. So, like, where are they today when it comes to, laptops and devices? So they pivoted. They actually also did the made to order, factory direct, all those different ingenuity things where he did control that entire supply chain and, man, brought it to the end customer, the end business, and captured and became, I think the largest PC sales for a while. I think they were number one for quite some time, and obviously they became a Goliath after that era. And it was an incredible journey that I witnessed because I was involved in that, and seeing what Lenovo and IBM was still in the Lenovo didn't even exist. It was still IBM, and HP acquiring Compaq, and just seeing how all that unraveled today. Some of these brands don't exist. Some of
Yeah.
these companies got out
I
of
mean,
got of selling laptops too. So like IBM and stuff like that.
think about it for a minute, right? If you go back 50 years in time and you look at the Fortune 500 and
Yeah,
you look at the Fortune 500 today, 75% of the brands that were in the Fortune 500 50 years ago literally do not exist anymore, either through acquisition or they crashed and burned or whatever, right? 75% of the brands. Now we look at them and we go, Fortune 500, biggest, bestest, the most important businesses, they could never be disrupted. They could never be outspent or outmaneuvered or outplanned because they've got every MBA you can afford to get out of a university, and they've got all the resources and the market share and the brand awareness. 75% of them go away.
incredible,
Apply
isn't it?
that to today's market reality. 75%. Take 500 companies, do 75% of them in another couple of decades, they're not going to exist. Which one's first? Which one is in your portfolio right now that you're going to go, ooh, geez, maybe I don't bet all of my stuff on one vendor? Like you said before, you diversify within reason on the customer verticals that you target, but you also diversify on your supply chain, because if you don't, loyalty and commitment and exclusivity in business sounds like a great thing. It's a great thing for the best treatment when times are good. It's also the fastest way to disruption when things go wrong. In both cases, it's just a definition of risk. You win when times are good, you get hammered when times are bad. So diversification is going to be an important thing. But you made a point earlier that I wanted to also kind of highlight there. You didn't wait for your customers to call you and go, yo, easy, I don't like this price anymore. I'm going to need to cancel and go work with somebody else. You went to them. You initiated the conversation. You proactively examined their business. You looked at alternatives. You found a reasonable source that could actually make it better for them. And you approached them proactively, right? I would say in times of uncertainty, when the market gets weird, natural human tendency is what I call turtling, right? Everybody
Yep.
just goes whoop, they pull in their arms and their head and they just hunker down, try to survive. It is never easy to go have hard conversations with your customers when times are bad, but you'll never have an easier time in business than when you're the one company that's out there proactively engaging with customers when everybody else is turtling, right? When you get out of your defensive mechanism, you put yourself back out there and you say, guys, the market's tough, things are weird. We're thinking about that and we've developed a proactive solution, compared to ducking phone calls and not responding to emails and like head in the sand. I don't want them to cancel that contract on me. Like, no, none of that is good. Nobody wants to get that cancellation phone call. Don't wait. You need to get out and engage proactively on purpose. If you can do that, even if in what you were saying took 10%, 20%, as long as you're managing your supply side and your cost structure, maybe your revenue went down by 10% or 20% on that customer, but hopefully your margins did not, right? You can manage
Right.
the cost within there so that you can still be healthy. But even in the worst definition of that, my revenue went down by 10%. My revenue went down by 30%. You know what sucks worse than your revenue going down 30%? Your revenue going down 100%,
That's right.
right? Like, I would rather have a customer who says, you know what, times are tight. I need a new solution. And they can engage with you and spend 70, 80, 90% as much money, as opposed to, you know what, we just can't do this and you're not willing to work with us. So we're out. Okay. You lost 10%. But, and I mean, this is something that I've counseled. It's amazing. CEOs of small businesses, very small startups, emerging companies, all the way to the C level of Fortune 500 companies, where you say to them, listen, guys, the market goes up and it goes down. Nobody likes it when it goes down. We want to see, spending in the technology industry next year is going to be 5, 10, 20% higher. You know what I think right now, the latest research that I've seen, global economy was shifting out of like consistent growth over the first 2 quarters of the year to flat right now. And we
Yeah.
don't know in the next 2 quarters what it's going to do. And the technology industry budget forecasts went from 7.5% up to flat
Yep.
to nobody knows what's going on. Okay. Even if the market research comes back and it says, hey guys, the market next year is going to shrink by 4%. Now, if it went from double digits up to 4% down, that's a huge swing, right? That's existential for a lot of ineffective businesses in our industry space. Not all the players will survive, but 4% down is still the same math as 96% continuous,
That's right.
right? Like they're still spending 96 cents out of every single dollar. It's not the end of the world. Uncertainty does not mark crisis, it marks opportunity if you know how to manage through this stuff consistently, professionally, proactively. And that's where, my advice to companies is when the shit hits the fan, you should be the first one back out after the storm, asking your customers, are you guys okay? How are you guys doing? What's up? How can we help out? And then here's what we're planning. Here's how we can help you weather this part of the market. We can get you through here. If you will be the one who's proactive and you bring, not just a, oh shit, what can we do? But you bring a legitimate, guys, we see the trouble. We've examined the situation. Here's 2 new ideas. Which one of these works best for you? The fact that you were proactive and the fact that you actually thought about them and brought an answer and not a complaint, you're going to get all the market share that you can engage when everybody else is just there. It's like playing sports. There's offense, there's defense. I'm on offense. I'm trying to win new customers. It's the easiest time I'll ever have scoring in that situation is when the other team doesn't even show up to play defense. They didn't even take the field. And I'm just in there talking to their customers going, guys, sorry about your current provider. Sorry that they're not getting back to you, but let's talk about you guys and where you can go in the future. This is an opportunity where, there's 2 ways to look at this math. If it's down by 4 or 5%, it's still the same, 95 or 96%. On the flip side of that, just because it's down 4 or 5% doesn't mean that each one of us will have the same equal reduction in our business. Some people will shrink by 100%. Some will shrink by 50%. Others will grow by 50%. The distribution of rewards in a competitive environment is never equal, and none of us wants it to be. You want equal opportunity. You do not want equal results. You don't want people picking, this is how high you can go and this is how big your business can be. Win on your merits. Win on how effective you are And if those guys, if there's 10 companies out there refusing to play defense, let's grow by 10% for each one of them, going and taking away some of their customers. And, you add up enough 10% and your business is thriving. So I think uncertainty gets a bad rap, right? Which is a weird way to think about it.
No,
Uncertainty, everybody thinks of it as a negative. I see it as a tremendous amount of time to rethink and find opportunity.
yeah, and I would say like in 2009 for us was a big critical year because our business, the 2007 to 2009 era
Yep.
for us was a critical point. Like if you look at the history of what went on during that time, we had a market uncertainty. The U.S. economy took a real dive. Microsoft launched something called hosted exchange. Um, then it was a reinsurgence on what we know as the cloud today. So all these variables came into effect, and actually another great guy that I've worked with now for almost 20 years, Rob Ray. That guy actually came to my office and got me onto something called Level Platforms, which was my first managed services platform. And he's like, "Oh, you got to sign." And Rob, if you ever met Rob, he's hilarious. With his deep voice, he's like, "You need to sign this," and I'm like, "Okay." So, I signed up and I was like, what am I doing with this stuff? And I almost lost my shirt because we were already struggling to try to figure out a new angle on how to bring on new business. And here I am trying to figure out managed services, which was like, call it a brand new industry and a brand new way of doing business for us. And then Microsoft throws in on top of that, we're no longer going to be selling Exchange servers in the next 5 to 10 years. And I'm like, I make all my money selling Exchange servers and setting them up and supporting those people. And they were like, yeah, well, we're never going to do that again. And I'm like, well, what's going to happen? You're going to like a revolt. And here we are, 15 years later, almost. Yeah, it's 15, almost 20 years later, and to look back and be said, I would never sell an Exchange server ever again. And we restructured, we grew based on that opportunity. And that's exactly it. Like the challenges always bring the best within us to find the next best thing. And I always say that those times I always dig deep and I try to come up with something new, an innovative way of doing something. And the ones that give up are the ones that just did not look above, like you said, they turtle or they put the head in their sand, and they just didn't look up to see what other opportunities were out
Mhm.
there to move ahead. But I will say one thing, and this one's an interesting one. So we're in an interesting time because not only are we potentially on the cusp of some sort of call it challenges. I don't call it, I'm not saying a recession. I'm going to call it a correction at this point in time. But we're in an interesting time. So companies are calling people back to work. Some people are saying it's the largest what is it, silent layoffs that are happening across North America right now by demanding coming back to the office. We've got the opportunity of AI, which is going to displace a whole bunch of people in different jobs. Then you've got one of the things that nobody really talks about, which is the boomers, and they're in that age bracket where they're all up for retirement. 60 plus for the majority of them. A lot of them are running, call it, I call it lifestyle businesses. So they're making 100 grand. They're getting by their business, and they're sitting there also going and saying, "Do I really want to take this and be my next challenge at 66, 68, and trying to make it happen for the next couple of years, or do I just cash out now?" And then you've got the next gen that's trying to get in on the workspace. There's a lot of interesting opportunities that are happening right now, where businesses are going to close down. And I've already seen it. Like in Toronto, I've gotten several calls in the last couple of months saying, our IT guy just disappeared and we have no passwords. We have no idea where they went. The phone lines are cut. And we don't even know how to get onto our network. We're dealing with that right now with two clients this week alone, where we're just going to have to rip the band-aid off and rebuild their entire network from zero because the guy is nowhere to be found. So there's that acquisition opportunity, but there's a lot of other opportunities that are percolating, and I'm exploring all of it. It's very interesting to see what's going to land on my lap.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, there's several dimensions of disruption and opportunity in the technology space, in the business model, and the cash flow model that you operate. Looking at the customer relationships and the structure of the engagements that you have with these guys, if you're looking at the humans inside the organization, and not only just their age, but also their savvy and their appetite for growth and for complexity. Not everybody is designed to grow in difficult times. But, and again, you think about it. When you started your business, did anybody come to you and like give you the official letter, like stamped and notarized on letterhead, that said, Easy, here's your guarantee, your business will be fine. You're going to make money. You will grow within these bounds. You will always be successful and make money. Did anybody give you that letter?
No.
Nobody gave me that letter. And I will tell you, there's never been a business alive that was guaranteed to be successful. You must embrace the uncertainty and the change and then get good at it, right? I think one of the most important lessons that I learned is there is a time to look around and figure out what needs to be done. There's a time to innovate and develop and productize that offering. There's a time to exploit that offering, to capitalize on that thing. It is the thing that needs to be in the market. It is right for the customer. It is right for your operation. Don't go small in those periods, right? You want to, when the model works and the money is flowing, you should capitalize on that thing as much as possible. But it's during that phase that you start your next iteration of looking around and seeing what's about to change, so that you can do the planning, so that you can move into the next deploy, deliver, and exploit phases, right? If you wait until the market sucks to go, oh no, things are bad, now I need to figure out something new to do. A, you're late. And B, even if you do come up with the right answer, the psychological toll of going through that process is brutal for you and for your employees and for your customers, right? Like when we wake up one day and go, oh shit, we're about to go out of business, we got to change something. Everybody around us looks around and goes, maybe I'm not taking that guy's investment advice in the future,
Right.
because he wasn't really looking out there. That cycle, if you think of it, there's subparts and specific disciplines within there, but there's three essential things. Look around and figure out what needs to be done. Plan, develop, and deploy. Exploit, capitalize, and grow. And then back to looking around and figuring it out and going back into the market. There is, here's a way to think of it. There is, in all of business, especially any business that is attached to or affected by technology, there is absolutely no such thing as a sustainable competitive advantage. Product feature functionality used to be like, my product is 10 times better than theirs. And it took them years to catch up. Now it's like, vendor A comes out with this whiz bang new shiny thing. And 90 days later at the next conference, their direct competitor comes out and goes, what, they just barely came to the market? We have this, and now we have the next thing. And they continuously competitively leapfrog each other in weeks of cycles, right? Like product functionality is not sustainable advantage anymore.
No,
Maybe
not.
roadmap, maybe the fact that whatever it is today is not what it will be in 2 years. There will be 6 or 8 iterations in between now and then. And our ability to innovate into the future, maybe that's an interesting attribute, but it is not a sustainable competitive advantage. Neither is price, neither is expertise, neither is proximity to or direct access to the customer marketplace. You go back to MBA school and think about the definition of competitive advantage. Why does one competitor win when somebody else doesn't win? We can classify that into 7 or 8 structural categories. And my observation is every single one of those is temporary because markets will shift and economies will grow, and they will ebb and they will flow. Things change. People come and go. And it's like you say, entire generations will eventually come and go. There is no such thing as sustainable competitive advantage. What you have to do is to admit that, and we'll all have a hug and go, crap, I thought I had figured it out and was going to be safe and okay, and I didn't have to work hard anymore. Okay, we're through the hug. Then, like, engage that as a proactive, repetitive, exciting cycle. Look around, figure out what's busted and what needs to be fixed. Figure out your answer to that thing and develop it into an offering. Go take that thing to market, get traction, drive for growth. Lather, rinse, repeat, right? There is no such thing about a business that will last for more than a handful of quarters as far as competitive advantage. Because if you go out there to the market and you're like, we're the cost leader, we can do the same thing that everybody else can do. We can do it for 15% less. We are the cost leader. You should buy from us. Give yourself 90 days. Recheck all your competitors' pricing. See if they are still where they were, or if a handful of them have directly aligned and maybe even undercut you. That's why I don't advocate pricing as a strategy, and the fast race down the spiral of the basin. You don't want to be racing for zero in pricing. But if you can think of those dimensions of competitive advantage, of what might be a reason why somebody would choose you instead of somebody else, admit that that thing is temporary. And the only thing that will sustain you is your ability to lather, rinse, and repeat. That's scary. That's really unfortunate for people, especially when they're 63 years old and go, ugh, I do not want to go back to the drawing board again. I don't want to do this thing again. Like, I get that it's disruptive, it's painful for some people, but it's actually fun, right? Like, if you do what we do and you enjoy it, like, spend a few hours every single week thinking about what's busted out there in my marketplace. What's the problem that people cannot fix right now? And then find a new way to fix that thing and be the first one to go out during really terrible uncertainty when everybody else is playing like huddling and protecting themselves. Go talk to all their customers.
Yeah.
Go take them to lunch. It's showing up in hard times carries tremendous weight with decision makers.
Yeah. And actually, it's funny you say that because a lot of times, most companies sort of one of the first things they stop doing when times get tough is market and advertise. And doing all of
Yep.
those marketing initiatives tend to be fluid when there's money to be, call it excess cash. Let's go out there, let's do all that stuff. And in the minute there's like a budget cut, first is IT and second is marketing, or some people will say first is marketing, then second is IT. But reality is that that's the worst mistake that any business can do, because you want to tell people that you're in business at this time of in that time, so that they're more aware of you during that need, and at the same time be first in mind when they're going to buy something. And it's just a matter of you coming up with the right offering. So
Yep.
yeah, it is about that product price placement and everything else to do with that, the P's. But yeah, it's a typical common mistake, ironically. And it's amazing how we can circle back on that same conversation over and over again every
Yeah.
time we go
See,
into a
and
finance.
this is the thing, right? We've been through this before.
Yeah.
Like, there was a pandemic a few years ago, and before that, there was the housing market crash, and before that, there was the 9/11 and Y2K thing, and before that. There will be up times, there will be down times. We get it.
Yep.
Pay attention, think about what's next, and find a way to be relevant in the future. It's the only, the old cliche, the only constant in an uncertain world is change. And mathematicians freak out when you say stuff like that because change by definition is not constant. We
So true.
we understand this is the world we live in. All right. If that's the game, if that's the way you succeed or don't succeed, let's figure it out and let's go win this thing. Because you can feel when things get weird, right? Like
Yeah.
you go to meetings, you talk to customers, you go to a conference. You don't have to wait for the economic data. You don't have to wait for like some pronouncement about the job market or whatever. You talk to 50 people over the course of a month and you're going to feel a shift in the vibe. And that's, as an economist and a market analyst, that is the least scientific thing I have ever said in
Yeah.
my entire life. But you can feel it. And right now, whether it's people freaked out about job displacement with AI or freaked out about tariffs or the economy in general, or, it's weird. Things are weird right now. And whenever that happens, I go back to here's the cycle. Here are 5 best practices. Here's a way to proactively, tactically approach my business right now and get it ready to refresh into the new cycle. It's hate having customers pull back, right? That sucks. Nobody wants that to happen. But when it happens, that is like the switch that goes off in my brain is here we go again. I want to be the one out there in the front, not the one who is last to the party. So I would say whether you sell technology today or cars, or as you mentioned, God bless you if you sell houses, but we apologize for what you're going through right now, right? Whatever it is you sell, things are weird. You'd better figure out how you refresh for the next cycle because nothing is permanent.
And so, you mentioned the top 5 things, and I know that there's some strategies out there in respect to that, like some people service the bejesus out of their customers to try to
Mm-hmm.
make them feel value during these times. Some people come up with different strategies on that. If there was like, because I know we're hitting up almost to an hour, so I kind of want to just kind of bring a couple. I wouldn't call it teasers, but there's
Mm-hmm.
top 1 or 2 things that we would want to tip. Give somebody out there as at least a call it an olive branch for them to think
Mm-hmm.
about. What would be that 1, 2 things that you need to kind of think about while you're going through some of these uncertain
Yep.
times?
That's a great point, right? And there's because again, we've counseled mega billion-dollar organizations on this topic and also mega thousand companies, right? It's a problem that affects everybody. And we've spent a lot of time trying to distill it down into the fundamentals. Number one is retention replaces acquisition as goal number one. Like literally, if you think it's tough to go out there and win new customers, and the data would suggest that it is, sales cycles are getting longer, acquisition costs are going up, decision uncertainty is expanding, way too many cooks in the kitchen on the committee at the customer trying to make a decision. There are a lot of things going on that are making customer acquisition more difficult. Don't stop that. Right? Please do not stop marketing. Please do not stop selling to net new customers. But every one of your existing customers that you can retain is one more customer you don't have to win in order to survive. So that North Star metric shifts away from, again, editorial note, never ever stop doing net new customer acquisition, never stop doing customer care and customer success and retention. You should always be doing those things. It's a question of weight. And right now, the weight should be shifting out of net new customer acquisition and into retention and expansion, right? Still a growth strategy. You can still increase top line and bottom line for your business if you do this proactively, but the weight and the flavor should be going to your existing customer saying, are you okay? Are we okay in this relationship? Let's talk about a new way to approach things and let's be relevant and energetic, not defensive and absent in that situation. So that's the first thing I would say, right? The second thing I would say is 1,000 straws on the camel's back instead of one magic solution, right? And what I mean by that is we all feel pressure. We all feel like that thing in our business, and oh no, we got to come up with the thing. And as a result, we say, okay, I do X in revenue. I need something that will do X plus 10, 50, 100%, whatever my ambitions are. I need to replace that thing. So if I do $5 million in top line, what can I do? What's my next $5 million opportunity? You ever notice when you ask people in the room, like, what's the next big gajillion dollar opportunity in your world? You notice how quiet they get? Because everybody's got an idea. Everybody in their head is like, well, I know what we could do. But then they don't say it because, well, shit, it's not another $5 million idea. So I'm just going to hold that back to myself. I think in our own minds as business leaders, but proactively to our team members, don't ask anybody for $1 million idea. Ask your team to think about what could we do that's worth somewhere between 15 and 25 grand. Just anything, right? A way that we can automate a process, a way that we can get some more marketing funds from a supply chain partner, a way that we could increase the price on a certain service because it's really tolerable in the marketplace. What can we do? And what you will notice happening in that process, right? If you're in the same room or if you're in the same virtual room, however you're doing it, it's not like a room full of people that sit back and fold their arms and go, I'm not speaking up. I don't have $1 million opportunity. But everybody instead they lean in and they go, well, here's an idea for 15 and here's an idea for 20 and here and here and here. And the next thing you know, you have 70 ideas. You cannot execute on 70 ideas. You must sort and stack and prioritize, but you got to do something new, right? As I said, there's no such thing as sustainable competitive advantage, and there is no path to expansion with your customers if all you ever do is what you have always done. You got to do something new. Bring new things to the market. One new product, one new vendor, one new service that you can package and engage with a customer. One way of communicating with a customer, something. If you don't bring something new to the market, then by definition, you're yesterday's news and you're going to get left behind.
Wow. And that is that's just incredible in the way you wrap that up. Very thought provoking, and I love it because you definitely do not want to be left behind. And I thank you, Ryan, for your time as always. Super enlightening in the sense of like, once I'm done talking to you for an hour, I'm always like, okay, what do I need to do with myself? Because like I know I'm trying to help everybody else out there in the sense of what they need to do for their business. So, this is key critical stuff out there, guys. So hopefully you take some nuggets from this one because this is game changing material, especially with what we're dealing with right now. Thank you so much, Ryan. I really appreciate your time. Look forward to the next one. And thank you, everybody out there, for listening in. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please like and subscribe. We hope to see you at the next one. Take care. Have a great day.
Thanks a lot, everybody.